Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Art imitates life, only in this case, art imitates death. For those of you who have been hiding under a rock for the last 18 months, back in October 2021, Alec Baldwin accidentally shot and killed a young cinematographer while filming a movie in New Mexico. There's been serious questions about how exactly Baldwin came to be pointing the gun at his victim and how he happened to pull the trigger as well. What's followed has been a largely tame and subdued response by the white media. They've basically been sympathetic to Baldwin. They haven't done a deep dive into Baldwin's past or his previous run-ins with the law, because that's something they only do to black people. The public has a short attention span, so by not mentioning Baldwin's priors, the white media is trying to give the false impression that he doesn't have any. Well, the black media don't play that, because you won't be surprised to learn that Alec Baldwin has a long-standing history of run-ins with the law and general public disturbances, mostly tied to the fact that this man simply cannot or will not control his temper. He's like a child. Well, what do you expect when you live in a society that caters to you and pampers you and gives you privilege and never tells you no? You get an entire group of people who become infantilized and think nothing about acting out until they become 30, 40, 50, and 60-year-olds throwing temper tantrums at the drop of a hat. Here's just a few of Alec Baldwin's past run-ins with the law and other violent altercations that the white media isn't talking about. In 1995, Baldwin got into an altercation with a photographer outside his home. Apparently, the paparazzi was taking video of Baldwin and his then-wife, Kim Basinger's newborn baby. Baldwin said he only slapped the camera out of the man's hand. The photographer, however, claims that Baldwin broke his nose. Baldwin was charged with misdemeanor battery, but was later acquitted. No one from the white media has reminded you about this incident, have they? In 2002, Baldwin and his then-wife Kim Basinger divorced. Basinger's father said that Baldwin's temper was a factor in the divorce. They asked him to seek counseling, but according to them, he went 1 or 2 times, then quit. Well, this wouldn't be Baldwin's last opportunity to seek counseling for his anger issues. In 2007, Baldwin and Basinger were locked in a bitter custody dispute over their daughter, Ireland. That was when Alec Baldwin left that infamous voicemail for his daughter that got leaked to the white media. He's just cursing and carrying on, threatening to fly out to where his daughter is and straighten her out, and he repeatedly calls her a pig. He does this to his 12-year-old daughter. Well, that's Dad of the Year material right there. In December 2011, he got himself kicked off an American Airlines flight after he refused to stop playing on his cell phone when the flight crew had closed the door and were giving the passengers their instructions. When the flight attendant had told him to turn off his phone, he became so furious he stormed off to the plane's lavatory. He reportedly slammed the door so hard that the crew in the cockpit heard it and became alarmed. Baldwin was asked to leave the plane, but he refused, and the plane sat at the gate until Baldwin finally left.
Come on.
Can you just tell us what happened?
Don't bump me.
I actually felt Alec Baldwin, was turning off his devices, and I don't know, he just got a little angry.
Alec, come on, man. Where's my gun?
Welcome to New York, Alec.
He was on his phone and he didn't want to get off the phone. Then he snuck into the bathroom and became a little bit irate, and they had to remove him from the flight.
Come on, dude.
He was very rude, caused us to be delayed, not very considerate. Just not a very...
American Airlines said Baldwin was extremely rude to the crew, calling them inappropriate names and using offensive language. But the white media hasn't reminded you about that one either, have they? In June 2012, he got into another physical altercation with a paparazzi outside the Marriage License Bureau, which is located at a courthouse, by the way. That's the perfect place to get into a tussle with someone. Oh, and just for the record, after the altercation, Baldwin then went on Twitter and posted this: "I suppose if the offending paparazzi was wearing a hoodie and I shot him, it would all blow over." A Trayvon Martin reference. Real classy. Then, just 10 days after that, he went and did it again, physically accosting a paparazzi in the middle of the street this time, grabbing the man's arm and berating and cursing at him to get out of here. August 2013, Baldwin confronted yet another photographer who had been taking pictures of Baldwin and his wife in Manhattan. Baldwin shoved the paparazzi against a car. The police came out, but both Baldwin and the photographer declined to press charges. Just 3 months after that, Baldwin got into another fight with the photographer, this time using a gay slur while screaming at the man. He tried to argue with TMZ about it, but in the end, he copped to it and apologized for using the slur. May 2014, Baldwin was arrested again in Manhattan, this time for riding his bike the wrong way down Fifth Avenue, but that wasn't what got him put in handcuffs. That happened because he began to argue with the officer when she asked him to show his ID, and he became belligerent with her. He was cited for biking the wrong way and disorderly conduct, but he's got genetic immunity from law, so he was given a pardon by the judge, and the charges were dropped. November 2018, Baldwin was arrested again after he punched a man over a parking space. Baldwin said the man had stolen his parking spot. Baldwin was charged with assault and harassment, so it's not just paparazzi that Baldwin has gotten into fights with. Apparently his fellow motorist and even his own daughter can get it too. Of course, genetic immunity from the law is the foundation of the American judicial system, so the DA gave Baldwin a plea deal where all he had to do was plead simple harassment, and the judge gave him a $120 fine and ordered him to attend an anger management course. By the way, Baldwin was 60 years old when he did this. 60. He was damn near a senior citizen, but still acting out like a punk teenager from Jersey Shore. See, if Baldwin had been black, the white media would be giving us a recap of his every brush with the law, if he had any, of every faux pas, every accusation made against him, even if they were proven to be false. They would repeat any gossip, any rumor, just so they would be able to push the narrative that, oh, this black man's had problems with the law. He's been involved in all sorts of trouble for a long time. And given this guy's decades-long anger issues, the white media would be putting that voicemail to his daughter on a constant loop, if he was black. We should have been hearing all about the fights and arrests that he's been involved with, and apparently he just can't seem to make it through his day without going off on someone, even his own daughter. Now, with this latest incident having resulted in a fatality, you would think, given the white media's history, that they'd be saying, well, it was just a matter of time before it got to this, and oh, look at how far Alec Baldwin has fallen. That's what they should be running. The rise and fall of Alec Baldwin. Oh, his history of erratic, out of control, and even violent behavior. Why aren't they bringing the same this was inevitable narrative to the story? Because white supremacy. That's why. Now, ever since he killed that woman, Baldwin has been steadily trying to change the headline ever since. First, he did some bizarre interview on the side of the road with some reporters. Then, when that backfired, he decided to weigh in on the Will Smith Oscar slap fiasco. But that blew up in his face even worse because the public couldn't help but notice that a man who killed someone looks really strange giving his opinion about somebody being slapped. These days, Baldwin is suing the armorer and the crew of the movie that he was on in an effort to clear his name. Normally, I would say that Baldwin needs to keep his mouth shut and that if he doesn't, he's going to talk himself right into a jail cell. But the reality is, in all likelihood, Baldwin's past record of being able to assault people, threaten his daughter, and break laws with no consequences will also repeat itself here. In fact, the authorities are already telegraphing that his immunity from the law has kicked in hard. Because although Alec Baldwin has been charged, the DA currently has no plans to arrest him. You heard that right. The DA said they're not going to arrest Alec Baldwin. Charged but not arrested? Oh, watch that white privilege work. This case has been under investigation for over a year now, and the only ones who have been more silent than the police up until this point are the white media. This is the first news of any charges to come out of it. As usual, the gears of justice grind to a halt the second the authorities don't have a black person to go after. There's no chance this will be treated as a trial of the century by the white media. No chance the white media will stake out any of Baldwin's homes and breathlessly report on the smallest insignificant rumor about this. No CNN reports like the case against Baldwin. No specials about the rise and fall of Alec Baldwin. You know, the kind of stories that they run about black celebrities who get in trouble, which is supposed to be a bookend to their career to say, well, this is the end of them, and we want to make sure you just remember they went out like this. The Me Too Time's Up crowd isn't saying a word about Alec Baldwin, about how he's been abusive towards women. They won't mention how he likes to pal around with the likes of convicted child rapist Roman Polanski and director James Toback, who, by the way, has been accused of everything from lewd behavior to sexual assault by 38 women. These are the kind of upstanding citizens that Alec Baldwin likes to hang around with. Now, the white media had no problem doing a fraudulent cover for the New York Magazine showing all the thots who accused Bill Cosby of wrongdoing. But this case with James Toback, 38 accusers. And New York Magazine doesn't want to do a cover with all of them, and neither does the LA Times or anyone else. They have a rule that they don't do that when the person accused isn't black. And Kamal Dumbbell won't be doing any documentaries about, we gotta talk about Alec Baldwin. He won't be talking about all the times Baldwin has been in trouble with the law and walked away without even a slap on the wrist. Apparently, rich and famous white celebrities don't qualify as powerful in Kamal Bell's book. And there will be no efforts to remind people of all the crimes and acting out that he's done over the decades because they don't want to make the public disgusted with him. That's why they're downplaying this, minimizing it. They want to paint him out as being some victim of circumstance. The white media is not about to undermine the legal doctrine of genetic immunity from law. The reporting will continue to be sympathetic towards Baldwin. It will be all about what kind of legal defense can he put forward. And of course, they'll be hinting that it ought to be successful. It won't be about how strong the DA's case is because they don't want to condition people to think that Baldwin should go to prison for this. When someone with genetic immunity from law's freedom is on the line, the white media narrative must be how difficult it's going to be to prove them guilty, and how there's no proof that they meant to do it, and how the accused has been overcharged, etc. They condition the public that, well, you need to understand why this person can't go to prison. They refuse to create an air of inevitability about this, because the same privilege that Baldwin has relied upon for all these decades to keep him out of prison is the same privilege that the people who run the white media depend on too. If I had to call it now, I would say Alec Baldwin will be allowed yet another plea deal. It's practically a cliche at this point. The assistant director on that movie has already accepted a plea deal and will get a suspended sentence and 6 months probation. So the DA is already seeming to telegraph that the refusal to arrest Baldwin isn't some fluke, it's the whole point. I suspect it won't be long at all before Baldwin is back on the set of yet another movie, this time shooting some scenes instead of people, I hope. And as for this incident, well, think about all the other celebrities who have killed people and never went to trial or spent a moment behind bars. I'm thinking about Caitlyn Jenner and Matthew Broderick, just to name a few. And when you think about that, you see that when the white media refuses to mention these people's wrongdoings, even when they kill people, the public will quickly forget. And even if this incident proves to be the exception, it won't mean much. Alec Baldwin will still be able to go back to making movies again, same way his pal Roman Polanski has been making movies and getting Oscars since he raped and sodomized a child back in the 70s, and he still hasn't seen the inside of a prison cell. Who knows? In time, the same white media who's ignored Baldwin's behavior may decide to make a movie about this tragedy. And knowing Alec Baldwin, he'll probably want to star in it as himself. If that happens, the white media will praise it, give it awards, laud Baldwin for his bravery, and probably ask when they'll make a sequel. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Terry White, Joy Henderson, Turk McKenzie, Marvin Woods, and Brian Walton. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.